vessels of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
In Dallas, Texas, 3 shots were fired at President Kennedy's motorcade in downtown Dallas. The first reports say that President Kennedy has been seriously wounded by this shooting.
It is a big idea, a new world order.
It was almost as if it were a planned implosion. It just pancaked.
Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
But I also believe that a lot of gun owners would agree that AK-47s belong in the hands of soldiers, not in the hands of criminals.
Guns will be taken. No one will be able to be armed. We have to take all guns.
For many of the police and guard troops, it is an uncomfortable job to do this in an American city.
Global governance at last. Is it one world? The central bankers in charge. But aren't we all just living and dying for what the central banks do?
As for me, give me liberty or give me death!
The answer to 1984 is 1776.
Welcome to the InfoWars Nightly News. I'm your host, Jakari Jackson. This is what we have in store for you for this December 20th, 2012 edition.
Tonight on the InfoWars Nightly News, the media ignores numerous school massacres stopped by gun owners defending children. And Jakari Jackson sits down with David Thweet, superintendent of Harold ISD Schools, who allows his teachers to carry guns in the classroom. Plus, life is so dangerous, should we ban everything? And tomorrow, fearing the end of the world, callers flood NASA. All this and more on tonight's InfoWars Nightly News.
And welcome back. Top story headline: Communist Chinese government calls for Americans to be disarmed. Now, I can't say I'm really surprised that they would call for something like this. It is also on Drudge, so make sure that you check out the mighty Drudge report. The Communist Chinese government, via its state-run media, has called for Americans to be disarmed, arguing that the Sandy Hook school massacre demands no delay for U.S. gun control. Now, the article calls on Obama to exploit the tragedy to push his gun control agenda, adding that his lame duck situation represents, quote, the best position to promote it, end quote, while blaming the National Rifle Association. Now, particularly, I'm not counting on the National Rifle to come out guns blazing, so to speak, to defend our rights come tomorrow. Each his own. Some of you are probably NRA members, but they haven't impressed me much as of late. But yeah, we'll see what happens tomorrow when they come out. I'm really afraid that they're going to buckle under pressure, to be quite honest with you. But, you know, we still have Gun Owners of America and, you know, other organizations fighting for your rights. So stick to your guns, so to speak, and hopefully we can bypass this latest storm. Next story. Media ignores numerous school massacres stopped by gun owners defending children. Let's take a look right here. One story that is repeatedly overlooked is how often firearms are used to save lives and stop senseless murders. Now, we have a complete list here. We'll start right there. On Pearl High School in Mississippi, this is back in 1997, a 16-year-old entered a school with a rifle. He killed 2 students, but the assistant principal retrieved a .45 caliber handgun from his glove box in his truck and kept the situation from getting any worse. We'll move on to our next one. Appalachia Law School in Virginia back in 2002. The suspect arrived on campus with a handgun around 1 p.m. and immediately killed 3 people, 2 of which were killed at point-blank range. 2 students retrieved handguns from their vehicles and stopped the situation from getting any worse, and it goes on from there. You can take a look at the complete list in this article. But yeah, this is stuff that the media doesn't want you to hear. They don't want you to know about. They want you to know about Sandy Hook and about Columbine. And yes, those were very serious situations, but you also have situations like this where people were able to arm themselves, defend themselves. And people always talk about, oh, I only want government to have guns and this and that. Well, one school shooting that I guarantee you will not hear about on any mainstream outlet is that of Kent State, where only the government had guns and only the government killed people, unarmed people at that. Students at that school, they don't want you to know about that. They just want you to, it seems like everybody can only remember like 2 or 3 years back. They can't remember anything before that. Back, I don't know, I'm sure that wasn't the original school shooting, but the first big school shooting in this country was Kent State. So let's not forget that. And we'll move on to our next article. Ex-ATF official's gun ends up at Mexican cartel shootout that killed beauty queen. Now, before we go to the article, some of you guys may remember, I believe it was last month, a Mexican beauty queen was hanging out with cartel. Why she was with the cartel, I don't know, but she was hanging out with the cartel. They came against some opposition, a shootout ensued, and she ended up dead, and they found some weapons there, questionable weapons, one of which was from this ATF agent. Let's take a look at the article. Records show that the gun purchased in January 2001 by George Gillert, the former number 2 in the ATF's office in Phoenix, he now works at the ATF headquarters in Washington. Mr. Gillert used a fake address to purchase his weapon, which if you try that, I guarantee you're going to get a knock on your door. But let's keep reading on here. Another weapon found at the crime scene was traced to Uriel Patino, who illegally bought more than 600 guns and is a main suspect in the controversial Operation Fast and Furious. Now, we've spoken at length about Fast and Furious on this program many times, so I'm not going to go over all the details. But basically, ATF shipped guns and explosives into Mexico to demonize the Second Amendment. And we see here Mr. Gillert. I'm not saying he was particularly involved in the ATF Fast and Furious, but his weapon ended up there, and he used a fake address. So I think that alone deserves some type of investigation. Especially, I mean, they basically 10 minutes away from getting your proctology exam when you go buy a gun. But I'm not even going to go to my dealings at the gun store. But anyway, we'll move on to our next article. Life is dangerous, ban everything. And this is an article from Melissa Milton where she talks about school violence and how you can't avoid all situations. Let's take a look. The 2011 FBI Unified Crime Report actually shows that American violence is down across the country. The number of American murders is now the lowest it has been in more than 40 years. Oh, there's Obama. I guess he had an eye itch right there. History shows that gun bans do not stop mentally disturbed people from finding ways to commit school massacres, which we saw recently with the guy was in China who ran around with a knife stabbing people. He didn't have a gun. I mean, you really don't need a gun to kill anybody. Yes, it does make it easier if that's what your intentions are, but not everybody who goes out and buys a gun does it with the intention to, you know, hurt somebody. They may buy it for self-defense purposes, but not to be proactive in establishing violence. And the article goes on and talks about guns, it talks about knives. I don't know, maybe kids may bite each other at school. Do you have to take everybody's teeth out? I'm joking, of course, on that one. But, you know, the way to protect your schools and your children is not to disarm people. And coming up after the break, we will speak with Mr. David Thweet, an advocate for gun rights, and also the superintendent of Harold ISD in northern Texas, where they allow teachers to carry guns in the classroom. Should be very interesting. So stick around for that.